Ours came from the UK, and they were part of like a generation of meerkats that were all born and bred here in the UK, because there's no reason to go and take some from Africa since we've got so many in the UK. But they still have that built-in fear of big birds, even though they've never had to deal with a large predator or anything like that. And we found that out because when we first got them, when we were quite close to Newcastle Airport here, so they saw a plane go overhead and they absolutely flipped their lids. They thought it was the biggest bird they've ever seen in their life. The apocalypse was coming, they were all going to die. And they would sound the alarm and run inside pretty regularly. They kind of have gotten used to the planes going overhead now. With the pandemic, obviously having less planes going overhead, they did get a little bit wary of them again. But now they just don't care at all. And we did try and actually stimulate that again by flying a kite over the enclosure that looked like a big bird, which sounds really cruel and nasty, but it is something that we experience in the wild. It gives them a problem to solve. And meerkats are very, very intelligent little creatures. They are constantly solving problems out in the wild with them being such a small prey animal. So they've got really high intelligence. And I'd say this group probably has about the same intelligence as one of our small monkeys.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep them really well entertained. And that means giving them nice things, like we've got a couple of like balls in here that they can roll around and get food out of. They sometimes get, excuse me, madam. Sometimes they get a ball pit as well, which is just like a big box full of ping pong balls and worms. And they get tunnels, things like that. And they do also get negative enrichment, which is things like a threat that they would have to kind of come over in the wild. So like the bird, and sometimes like snake skins as well. We'll put them in when our snakes are dead.
You'll have to.
Oh, you're okay.
Oh my gosh, that's so cheeky. So anything that they would kind of, like we don't want to put an actual snake in here because that would be very stressful for all animals involved. But when you put a snake shed in here, they'll have the same sort of predator response that they normally would, and it gives them something quite new to explore as well.
Meerkat.
So we've got to keep them, we've got to do a lot of work to keep our meerkats entertained. Comparing that to like our donkeys or our Shetland ponies, if we chuck like a yoga ball in with them, they're entertained for months. And they'll just kick that around for months, and it's so easy. But with the monkeys and the meerkats and things like that, we've got to keep thinking of new ways to kind of keep them going, keep them stopping from getting bored. Because basically, if you get bored as an animal in the zoo, you'll start entertaining yourself, which doesn't sound too bad until you realise that there's not really like an iPad or anything in here. So they will resort to fighting each other, attacking keepers and attacking people who come in here just for something to do, and potentially attacking themselves as well, so like self-harming. Which is obviously not something that we want any of our animals doing.
Just taking it off of that.
They're the worms. Are these ones? Yeah. Sorry, I'm listening to you. I'm just
No, it's okay. They're very confident this morning, which is why I like. And then Sandy's keeping an eye out. With the bigger groups, there'll usually be a lot more than one meerkat on their sort of sentry position. It's not the best position to be in. Obviously, you're at the highest point of sort of territory where you live, so you're going to be the first thing that a predator sees, and you've got to sound the alarm as well, so you're going to be the first thing that they hear.
Do they like take turns of being there?
They do, yeah. I would say the most that one will do it at a time is potentially like 10-15 minutes. It's very exhausting for them because you can see they run around on all fours, but they've got to stand up on two legs to see that, so it's like us standing on one leg for an extended amount of time basically. And so they will take turns. Sometimes there'll be one or two of them doing it in here. With your bigger groups, they'll usually be about 20 because their territories in the wild can be about 5 kilometers big, which is a lot more space to kind of look out for. Now, this is Sandy doing it properly. We do have some very lazy meerkats in here as well. As I was saying, they are getting up there in age, and they have just sort of figured out that there's not really a huge threat to them here in the northeast. So sometimes they'll just sit on their bums, belly out, like someone in IBP who's had way too many beers. It's very unflattering. Just like that. And sometimes it's even more like just, can't be bothered. But when they're doing it properly, it is right up on their tippy toes, using their tail as kind of like a little balance beam. Second worst job you could get as a meerkat is probably the babysitter. You've got to be a very intense babysitter if you're a meerkat. It's only the dominant female that's allowed to breed, so potentially not even your babies that you're looking after. So you've got to be really into keeping your family safe because they're potentially not your babies. They live in these big underground tunnel systems in the wild, and there'll be like a baby room where they'll kind of just put all the babies, and there'll be one meerkat there to guard them.
Oh, it sounds like my job.
Well, since they're underground, they're not really faced from the birds of prey kind of issue or anything like the lions or jaguars or something that will eat them like that. They're actually facing off, they're actually facing off against other meerkats. Even though they are fiercely protective of their family groups and the groups that they live in, there's a lot of groups of meerkats in the wild, and every single one wants to be the number one group of meerkat in the wild, which means that they get the best territory and the best food and the best kind of space and the best mates. And to do